Shalom, shalom. What's good? What's good? We back at it. You know, we still keeping our eye open on the World War III. I know y'all see the title. We back back keeping a watch on World War III. You know, because a lot of us been caught up with the whole Diddy news, celebrity news, all the other stuff. That's going on. You know, you know, we get caught up in it, but we forgetting what's being swept behind the rug, under the rug, in the news, which is what's happening with this war thing, right? And so big news, right? Of course, we want to start off by giving all praises to the Most High. We do so in His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, right? So now, if you've been watching the news, you probably heard about Iran, bombing Israel and all that cool stuff. And it was a retaliation from a couple of weeks ago when they blew up their cell phones and pagers and stuff and killed a lot of their leaders. So it's just been escalating, been going back and forth, right? And then so and it's interesting to the point that you had a day before that happened, the Russian prime minister met with the president of Iran. They had a little meeting, whatever the meeting was about. Next day, Iran did what they did. You know what I'm saying? So Russia got their back. You know what I'm saying? And so, like I said, it's going down. Then, if America, go at it, with Iran, then Russia gonna get involved because Russia got their back. What else? And Russia also said too, as far as the Ukraine situation, if the Ukrainians hit them with any type of American-made missiles, Russia gonna push the button, and that's big news. They're not talking about it, and he already got warships over there in Cuba or Venezuela, all that cool stuff, right? So he already in striking distance of the country, right? So there's a lot of stuff going on, right? So, but we're gonna get into the prophecies of things and see how all this play out, and what the Most High said, right? How how we can discern the times. So first, just prove the times that we in, right? So, and 'cause a lot of people been talking about the end and all that stuff, but this is we actually living in a generation that's actually going to see the second coming of who the world called Christ come back. And so just prove that, right? So let's go to Daniel, right? Let's start at Daniel 2, because Daniel break it down. Daniel breaks it all the way down, because Daniel tell you like the different kingdoms that come into rulership, and all that, right? And when you look at history, because of course we live in 2024, so we able to look back and see how all those things played out that these prophets wrote. So this is Daniel. We're gonna start at 38. Daniel 2 and 38, right? And it says, and whosoever the children of man dwell in the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven, and have he given unto thy hand, and have made thee ruler over them all. Right. So now this is so if you're not familiar, this is what's going on here. This is a Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, right? Historical figure, right? And so now he had a dream that he couldn't understand and he couldn't remember. So Daniel is, breaking down the dream. He explaining with the different symbolisms that he saw within the dream, right? And so that's what he's saying. So he's explaining that Babylon is because he saw a statue in his dream, and the statue was made of different type of metals, right? And at the top of that statue was gold, which represent Babylon, because Babylon was the greatest empire that ever existed. Then after Babylon, then you got the Persians and the Medes, and they're made out of silver, right? So then, as you work your way down the statue, the metals get more cheaper and cheaper, you know, as far as like worth, you know, meaning the governments and those empires that come after Babylon, they're going to be getting weaker and weaker and weaker, right? They're not going to be as prominent as how Babylon is or was, you know. So yeah, so it says, and whosoever the children of men dwell in the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heavens, and have given unto thy hand, and have made thee ruler over them all, thou art the head of the gold. So it's telling Nebuchadnezzar, you are that golden head of the statue. Then it says, after thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all earth. So now it's talking about it's going to be another kingdom that come in after you, which is, we know through history, was the Persian and the Mede, you know, empire, and they were a little weaker as far as government wise, you know, ruling a nation wise. You know, they were a little more lenient. You know, they wasn't as strict as Nebuchadnezzar, because Nebuchadnezzar wanted people to worship him like a god. The Persians came in and said, all right, y'all can do y'all thing, just pay us tribute, just give us taxes. We just want y'all to break us off a little something, you know, and fight in our army and break us off a little something. So there's a little more lenient than, you know, Nebuchadnezzar and his empire. So then it says, then talk about the, you know, then a third, which would be the Greeks, because the Greeks came into power after the Persians. So what was it? Boom, boom, boom. It says in the third kingdom of brass, which is the Greeks, which shall bear rule over all the earth. Because, you know, the Greeks, they took over a lot of things. You know, they, you know, took over the known world, all that cool stuff. And it says, in the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, much as iron breaketh in pieces, and subdue all things, that all these shall it break in pieces and bruise. So this is talking about the Roman Empire. So the Roman Empire came in after the Greeks, and because they took down the Greeks, and, you know, then they came into power. Then it says, whereas thou sawest the feet and toes of powder of clay, part iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be strength in the iron. Because, you know, iron is still strong, but it's mixed with the clay. So it's telling you that this final kingdom, because, you know, we already went through the four kingdoms, then this final kingdom is going to be strong because of its military might, but then its government and its policies, its ruling ability is weak. So that's where that clay and that iron come in the mix. And it says, whereas thou saw the feet and the toes, part of potter's clay, part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be strength in iron, for much as thou saw the iron mixed with clay. As the 10 toes of the feet were part of iron. Now these 10 toes are, you know, back then it was part of the Roman province. They had different province, you know, like stretching all the way out to England, right? So that was the former Roman Empire. But this is the revised Roman Empire that we're speaking about. The one where, you know, you read in Revelation and talk about the beast that had the deadly wound been healed. It's talking about this government system, empire, which is this current empire, which is the Western Empire, spearheaded by America under the EU and what they call NATO, right? So now that is the modern day 10 toes. The modern day, because you got the same, when you look at the map, look at the old Roman Empire. Look at the same nations that were under that empire. It's the same nations that we see under the EU. And so, and then again, it says, and as for the toes of the feet were part iron and part clay, so shall the kingdom be partly strong and partly broken. And that's what's going on. You know, you know, they put sanctions on Russia like a few years ago, right? But then you have countries that's within the NATO, you know, within their NATO thing, that's going against the sanctions that they put on Russia. And they're supposed to be together. You know, America, you know, France, all them, you know, countries supposed to be together. But, you know, they say, all right, we're going to sanction this, you know, Russia on that. And they're like, nah, we kind of need to mess with Russia, you know, so we ain't rocking with that. You know, you got Turkey, that's a part of the EU, that's on schedule to try to join with the BRICS. And the BRICS, that's the Eastern Empire, you know, spearheaded by Russia, right? So, and they're supposed to be part of NATO in the EU. So you have within their fashion of this split. You know, some of them is for the war with Russia and the stuff that's going on in Israel. Some of them like, look, just chill. You know, we don't, you know, we ain't trying, you know, just chill. Everybody cool out, right? So that's what it's talking about, being divided, you know, as far as their government. You know, they're not going to see eye to eye, right? And we can see that play out when we look on the news, like especially here in America. You know, the House and the Republicans. You know, I mean, I said the House and Republicans, the Republicans and the Democrats. You know, for them to pass a bill, they have to see eye to eye. You know, for them to make a law, but oftentimes they don't. You know, so that's why it's saying that it'd be partly strong but partly divided. They're strong because America has the strongest military. They have a military garrison in every dang old country you can think of. You know, they're everywhere. You know, they can hit any part of the world, you know, within, you know, whatever time, you know, reasonable time frame, because they got bases everywhere, right? So they're strong in that aspect. But as far as ruling, you know, they're splintered because they can't, you know, be on one accord on how to, you know, govern the nation. So then it says, and as for the toes and the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so shall the kingdom be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest the iron mixed with myrrh and clay shall mingle themselves with the seed of man, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay, right? So, and it says they're going to mingle their seed with man, meaning America is a melting pot. It got a little bit of everything up in there. You got what they call Chinese Americans, you got African Americans, Mexican Americans, you know, every nationality's here. So it says they should mingle themselves with man. But then guess what? Everybody's here and they push this oneness, right? But everybody doesn't really get along that well, because just like how the government is not seeing eye to eye, the people also. It's dissension amongst the people. It's division amongst the people. What they would call racism, right? So, and it says, and whereas thou saw the iron mixed with myrrh and clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of man, but they shall not cleave to one another. So they preach this oneness here in America. You know, we all one nation, but we, you know, how to say, actions speak louder than words. And it's not just here in America, all their Western counterparts. You know, you go to Europe, the same thing. You know, the ones that follow you know, I'm talking about the ones that's under the Western, you know, philosophy, right? It's the same thing, right? So then it says, and in those days, these kings shall God of the heavens set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and shall stand forever. So it's talking about when Yahweh Shai, who the world calls Jesus, come back, he's going to destroy these other kingdoms, these nations, right? And then set up his government and rule in righteousness. Because you got to understand, you know, people that go to church and they say they want to pray for this and pray for that and want Jesus to come back. You gotta understand, like the way the world is being ran now under this current system, these governments, these nations can't exist if Christ is going to come back, because they can't do what they're doing now. So to say, oh, pray for this or pray, when not to say that, okay, yeah, you see something bad, okay, yeah, of course, we human, but in the grand scheme of things, Christ is coming back to rule. And we just read that all these nations is going to be broken into pieces. And that's through what they call World War III, and what what we also know as Armageddon. That's how that's going to happen, right? So then it says, and it says, boom, boom, boom. Yeah, it said, and shall rule forever. For much as thou saw the stone cut out of the mountain without hands, and that breaketh in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, and the silver, and the gold, the great God hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. So meaning this is going to happen. So how your dream is, how God explained to you in your dream all these different nations that's going to come into power after you, and their downfall is going to happen. Then of course, like I said earlier, we live in 2024, so we can look back and see that all these nations that Daniel prophesied that was going to come into existence, they came and they went, right? And then to speak about this last empire, which is the one that we're living in now. Because we got to understand, like, the average empire lasts for 250 years on average, right? Before their decline. And I believe America is like 50 or 70 years past, that, time limit or whatever. I'm not sure. So, right now, let's go to Lamentation, right? Let's get Lamentation really, really quick. This right here is going to, further prove, right, where we at. Boom, Lamentation, let's get Lamentation 4 and 21, right? So now this is Lamentation 4 and 21. So now this is a prophecy. So it says, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, which dwelleth in the land of Uz, and the cup also passed through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken, and thou shalt make thyself naked. Meaning, this nation of Edom, right, it's going to come upon a time where they're going to be exposed, and everybody's going to look at these people and say, hey, these people, something ain't right about them. They're going around and doing, not going to speaker time. They're going around and doing all type of wickedness, right? They're going to be exposed. Then it says, the punishment of thy iniquity is accomplished. So now he's talking to the Israelites. It says the punishment of thy iniquity has been accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee into captivity. He will visit thy iniquity, O daughter of Edom. Right? So now, why is this important? Why I bring us here? Because I'm establishing the timeline of where we at in prophecy when it comes to, how things is playing out. So I went to Daniel to show that all these different empires came into existence, and we're living in the last empire that Daniel prophesied. This scripture right here just said that he would no longer take Israel into slavery again. So now, if you're familiar with history, we went into slavery, a few hundred years ago, right? And under a certain nation of people, right? So now it's telling them right here, it says, the punishment of thy iniquity is accomplished, O daughter of Zion. He will no more carry thee into captivity. He will visit thy iniquity, O daughter of Edom. Edom is the biblical nationality of the people that took the Israelites into slavery, right? Then it says, and he will discover thy sins. So why is come here to show you that Israel, when you go to the history of the Bible, Israelites went in and out of slavery. We had like 7 major captivities that we went into, right? And so what he's telling us that under the Edomites, whoever that nation is, right? If you know, you know, that is going to be the Israelites' last captivity, right? And so we know here in America, you know, that we spent our time here in captivity. So the Bible is telling you under this nation of Edom, which will have the Israelites in the last days under captivity, this is going to be the last one. So that's why I went through all those different, went through Daniel and this one to show you where we at. You know, so, and because of this prophecy, and because of Daniel prophecy, we can, you know, pinpoint where we at in this thing, right? And of course, among other things too, right? So let's get Revelation 17 real quick. All right, 17 and 16. So now this is more on the EU, the NATO thing. So it says, so it's Revelation 17 and 16. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, they shall hate the whore, and they shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Right? This is talking about the whore is America, because when you get into the prophecy, it says the whore that ride the beast. The beast is NATO in the EU. It's not some type of spooky stuff that some of us may think. You know, it's just the beast is a symbol of government rulership, and it's talking about the EU and NATO. And the whore is America because America spearheads it, right? America leads it. Whatever America want to do, NATO is with it, right? So it says, in the 10 horn which saws upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and eat her flesh. So why is NATO is going to hate the whore? Because what we just read in Daniel in the 10 toes, that they're going to be divided, right? They're not going to see eye to eye. Some of them want to go to war, some of them don't, you know, and some of them, and since they under article, I think either, don't quote me, either it's article 7 or article 13, one of those two. That under that article, if America get on bullshit, get on something with another country, they got to roll with it, and they don't want to roll with it, but they're gonna have to roll with it. So it says that they should hate the whore and burn her with fire. So what does that mean? They're gonna end up turning against America and start riding with Russia and their counterparts, right? That's what's gonna happen. So when Russia, you know, push that button, they're gonna be like, well, shit, we got a button too, and America got us into this. We're going to push it too. So that's what it's telling us. Let's read it again. It says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest with the beast, these shall hate the whore, and they shall make her desolate and naked, and they shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God hath put it in their hearts to fulfill his will, to agree and to give their kingdom unto the beast until the words of God is fulfilled. So right now, they're rolling together. So God said he put it in their hearts to form this EU, this NATO thing for them to come together. And then he's going to use them to destroy them for what they have been doing to us, and not just us, the whole earth, right? So, and we can prove that. Let's go to Exodus 15 and 3 real quick. Because everybody, you know, we got to understand the type of God that we serve, right? And of course, you know, God is love, right? But God is also balance. Just like you're not one emotion, he's not one emotion. So the Bible says that, Exodus 15 and 3, the Lord is a man of war. Yahweh is his name, right? So this is why God's getting down like this, because he's a man of war, right? You know, some of the ancients, when you get into the history of, you know, some of the surrounding nations that lived around Israel, since they didn't know the name of the God of Israel, they used to call him the God of war. They thought he was a war god, right? Because how he got down, you know. I'm talking about when you get into the surrounding nations. You might not. I mean, in the Bible too, it tells you how the other nations called him terrible. You know, and all that stuff, right? So there's a lot of things, right? He's a war god, right? So let's get boom boom boom. Let's go to Daniel 4:17 real quick. Boom. So Daniel 4:17 says, For this matter is by the decree of the watchers and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to intend that the living may know that the Most High rule in the kingdom of men, and give it unto whomsoever he will, and setteth upon over it the basis of men. So, meaning he does what he wants. We like toy soldiers. He controls us. He does what we does what he wants us to do. So, of course, and that means that it's no free will. Of course, a lot of people believe that we have free will, but it's the illusion that we have free will, because it just told us that he rules in the kingdom of men. He decides who's going to be the top nation, who's not, who's going to do this, what army's going to win, what army's not. He the one that does this. He controlling everything, not some of the stuff, everything, right? It tells you in Isaiah that I, the Lord, do all these things, right? So let's get let's go to Jeremiah real quick. Let's go to Jeremiah 50. Alright, boom. Let's go to Jeremiah 50 and 20, right? And so here it says start at 20. So it says, in those days, in that time, said the Lord, the iniquity of Israel should be sought for, and there should be none. In the sins of Judah, they should not be found. For I will pardon them who I have reserved. Right? Go against the land of Marthatayim, against it, and boom, boom, boom. Hold on, let me drop down to 22. My bad. A sound of battle is in the land. The sound of battle is in the land, and great destruction. How the hammer of the whole earth is cut to cinder and broken. How Babylon become a destruction among the nations. Right? So, what is the hammer among the earth? Right? Who is the hammer among the earth? America. How is America the hammer among the earth? Because they police the world. They go around the whole world telling what countries what to do and what not to do. And if you don't do it, they bomb you. So they are the hammer around the earth. They the ones that's going around setting standards and say, okay, this is how we're gonna operate, right? And then of course you have a set of countries that's not with it, and that's why they at war. With these, certain countries that's not, with the whole empireship of the Western world. Right? So it says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become desolate among the nations? Because of course, America is known as Babylon in the Bible, or the daughter of Babylon, right? Then it says, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou thou is not aware, right? So let's get it in the G&T real quick. Boom, what's that, Jeremiah? That's what I was meant to do. Right now, boom, 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 boom. Alright, let's read it right here. Boom, it says, the noise of battle is heard in the land. So it says, great destruction, Babylonia, a hammer is the whole world, that hammered the whole world into pieces, and now the hammer is shattered. All the nations are shocked at what happened to the country. Babylonia, you fought against me, and you have caught in a trap I have set for you. So God is, like I said, like those previous verses I read to show you that what was it? Dang. It was boom 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 Daniel in Daniel 4:17 where it says that he rules in the kingdom of men. So it's letting you know that he set the table for all this to happen the way it's played out. He's setting these nations up to do what they're doing, for he can destroy them for doing what they have been doing, right? So it says, I had, you have been caught in a trap I had set for you, even though you did not know it. I have opened a place where my weapons are stored in my anger. I have taken them out because I, the servant Lord Almighty, have work to do in Babylonia. Right? Attack from every side and break open the pieces where the grain is stored. Piled up the loot like pieces of grain. Destroy the country. Leave nothing at all. Kill the soldiers, slaughter them. The people of Babylonia are doomed. The time has come for them to be punished, right? And it says, refugees escape from Babylon, right? So, let's get it over there. Let's read 28 over there. Then it says, rejoice of them, flee and escape out of the land of Babylon. Declare in Zion the vengeance of Yahweh, our God, the vengeance of his temple. So this is why God is doing this, for vengeance. Because look, we got to understand what type of God we got, right? You think what happened to us, our history, that can just go unpunished and, that's okay, everything gonna be gravy, everything's cool? If you believe that, then you don't believe in a just God. You actually don't believe in you reap what you sow. If you believe that we can go through everything we went through here and there's no repercussions to the people that done it and benefit from it, then you really don't believe in what goes around comes around. You really don't believe in God to be a man of justice, right? Because that's what's happening. So let's get let's go to Joel real quick. Because that's what it says. It says, the voice of them that flee escape out of the land of Babylon, to declare in Zion the vengeance of the Lord, our God, the vengeance of his temple. And we are this temple, because the people is the temple, right? So just get Joel really, really quick. Let's get Joel. Get it over here too. Okay, boom. So just read it over here first. So now, this is Joel chapter 3, right? We're going to start at the top, verse 1. Then it says, for behold, in those days, in that time when shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. Meaning he's going to take us out of these different places that we were scattered to. Then it says, and I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. I will gather all nations. I will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I will plead with them for my people and for my heritage Israel. I have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Who have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So, God is saying he's going to bring all these nations into the valley of Jehoshaphat. Which is, over in northern Israel, where all these countries is getting lined up to go pretty soon. Then it says, boom, 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 and they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot and a girl for wine that they may drink. Meaning, talking about how they sold us off to these different nations, right? So, so God is mad about that. You know what I'm saying? So we can't think that the stuff that happened to us, that it's not going to be a payback to the stuff that happened. So just read it over here in the GNT, right? One second. I can't see that good. Who's that? Who's that? What up? Yeah. So yeah, let's check it out in G&T real quick. So it says, it's the same book. So it says, and the Lord said, at that time I will restore the prosperity of Judah. Boom. Hold on. Yeah, I'll restore the prosperity of Judah and Jerusalem, and I will gather all the nations and bring them to the valley of judgment. So all these nations getting forced into the war into the Middle East, because Russia is going to have to ride for Iran, and we're going to prove that, right? We're going to prove that. So all these different countries is going to have to, God is forcing them into that area. It says, I will gather all nations and bring them into the valley of judgment. There I will judge them for all they have done to my people. So why is God doing this? Because it says, for all they have done to my people. They have scattered the Israelites in foreign countries. So who's scattered in all nations? We are. We're scattered in all nations. Right? We're in everywhere. Right? And that happened because of the Arab slave trade and the Atlantic slave trade. And then, and if you want to go a little further than that, when the Romans shipped us off. If you want to go a little further than that, when Salmanassar of King of Persia, I believe, or Babylon, shipped us off, in two different parts. So, like I said, we're scattered. Then it says, they have scattered the Israelites into foreign countries and divided Israel, my land. And who divided the land of Israel? Why? What's going on over there right now? Because somebody divided the land of Israel. Right? Who did that? We didn't do that. Somebody did that. And God is mad at those people that did that. And it says, they have scattered the Israelites in foreign countries and divided Israel, my land, and threw dice to decide who will get the captives. So they over there like, man, the shooting dice betting on who's going to get what and who's going to get who, right? As they dividing the holy land of God that was supposed to be for Israel, right? That's what's happening here. And it says, they sold a boy and a girl into slavery. Who was sold into slavery? I mean, we were, right? We know the history. We were sold into slavery. They were sold into slavery to pay for prostitutes and wine. That's what the Africans gave us up for. You know what I'm saying? For some wine. Maybe for some women, some guns, some supplies. That's what they sold us for. And it says, what are you trying... so let's read it over here. Let's get back to the KJV. So it says... Where is that? Boom, boom, boom. Where was that? Hold on. Okay, yeah, verse 4. My bad. So it says, yeah, what have you to do with me, Tyre and Zidon? These are African and Arab nations. Then it says, in the coast of Palestine, will ye render me a recompense? And if ye recompense me swiftly and speedily will I return your recompense upon your own head. Meaning, like, how you what you gonna pay me back? You trying to, you got beef with me? You got a problem with me? You think you can do something to me that you can actually, get back at me? So God said, anything you try to do, that which in this case, they did it to us, by, the atrocities that they did to us. So anything that you do to me, I'm going to repay it back on you, So, you can go around trying to hurt my people, but you're going to have to pay for it. And it says, you have taken my, it says, let me read it back over here. It says, I will quickly pay you back. You have taken my silver and my gold and carried my treasures unto your temples and have taken the people of Judah and Jerusalem far from their own country and sold them to the Greeks. So this is telling you, like, we got so, and Of course, they wasn't going around calling themselves Caucasian or white. They were being called by their nation, and which it said we were sold to the Greeks. This is history. We know this history because God is talking to, right now in this instance, He's talking to some African and Arab nations, and He's talking about how they sold us to the white man, to white people, right? So, and because of course Greeks is white, right? I mean, I can't be tripping right there, right? So it says, and sold them to the Greeks, and now I'm going to bring them out of the place which you have sold them, and will do to you what you have done to them. I will let your sons and daughters be sold to Judah. They will sell them to the far off Sabians, and I the Lord have spoken, right? So that's what's happening, right? That's what's going on. So let's get now let's go to Ezekiel, right? Now I just get into the whole shebangy thing. Let's go to Ezekiel 38. So I just have to build that up to show you, why certain things is happening, the time that we living in, right? So now this is Ezekiel 38. And start at 1. It says, and the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, in the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal. Right? So what is this? Gog is Gog is like it's like the prince of Russia or the king of Russia. Magog is an ancient name to say Russia. It's an ancient biblical name because Magog is actually the ancient Moscow, right? So it says, and the chief prince of Meshach and Tubal, right? So these different countries that was confederate with Russia at one point in time, like Ukraine, the Slavic nations. When you look at the USSR, like all those nations that was under the USSR, that's what this is basically encompassing, right? Then it says, and I will turn back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thy enemy, and horses, and horsemen, and all clothed with them all sorts of armor, even great company, with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords, right? So it's talking about you're going to put Russia in that state of mind of war, right? Put them in that war state of mind. Bring them back to that Soviet mind state when it was, when it was about that, and that's what Putin is on. Putin, because we already said earlier, Putin said if he get hit with American missile by the Ukrainians, he's gonna push the button. He ain't talking about, okay, you hit me with a missile, I'm gonna hit you with a missile. He's talking about, Putin said the N-word. That's what he said, the real N-word. And we talking about nukes. Putin said he's gonna push the nuclear button if he get hit with a missile. That's what type of time he on. So it says, I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth in all thy army, horses and horsemen, and all men clothed with all sorts of armor, even great company with bucklers and shields, and all of them handling swords. Right? Talking about the army that he wants Putin to put together, or whoever may be ruling. Then it says, Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shields and helmet. So it's talking about all these nations that's going to be rolling with Russia. So just think about this. What is Persia, right? Iran name used to be Persia all the way up until 20 something, or maybe a little bit after that. But if you old enough to remember, they had something called Persian rugs, right? Iran was called Persia. Iran, Syria, that area was all known as Persia, right? Ethiopia, that's simple enough. We know what Ethiopia is, right? And Ethiopia is rolling with Russia, coincidentally, and not only that, Persia, aka Iran, is rolling with Russia. right? Then it says Libya. Libya is rolling with Russia. Then it says, and all of them with shields and helmets. Gomer, uh, that's, like I said, that's one, I can't remember exactly what nation that is exactly, but it's, I believe it's part of the USSR too, and they rolling with them. I know some people say Gomer is France, even though France is a nation that people want to look out for, because France is, they're not vibing with America, and they part of NATO. Going back to what we read earlier in Daniel about how they're not going to be, really rocking with each other like that. They only going to be strong through their military, but besides that, they're not going to really be seeing eye to eye. And it says, all of his bands, the house of Telegrama, believe that's an Arab country, in the north quarters, and all his bands, many of them with thee. So Russia's bringing in everybody that's coming with the bricks, right? Then it says, be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, and thou all thy company as are assembled thee unto thee, and be a guard. This is the part I want to get. Be a guard unto them. So God is telling Russia, all these nations that's under you, be a guard to them, protect them. And that's what Russia's going to do with Iran. That's why Russia is ready to step. That's why when a Russian prime minister went to go visit the Iran prime minister, president dude, the next day Iran struck Israel, because Russia is ready to step. Why? Because Bible prophecy told us, and God put that spirit on them, says, be thou a guard unto them. So God says, go ahead and protect your people. Protect your, ride for them. Do that. Right? Let's get it in the GMT over here. Matter of fact, no, let's keep reading. We can keep reading. So it says, boom, 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 start at verse 8. After many days thou shalt be visited, in latter years thou shalt come in the land that is brought back from the sword, and gather out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have always waste, but is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely of them. Right? So now, this is talking about the Israelites. So now, while everybody going crazy, World War III, everybody blowing up everything, hopefully, we are a part of this select group that we just read right here in this verse, that's over in the wilderness in Israel being protected while all hell is breaking loose on the earth. Then it says, after many days thou shalt be visited, in latter years thou shalt come to the land that is brought back from the sword, and gather out of many people against the mountain of Israel. So it's talking about, because like Israel, of course they bombing everything, but then the actual, like, what we believe to be the actual Jerusalem and all that stuff, and which is Telerad, that is laid desolate. You know what I'm saying? You can see, in Telerad, it's a temple that says that's dedicated to Yahweh. And then if familiar with the Israelites, they would not have a temple nowhere else in Israel with Yahweh's name on it unless it was Jerusalem. So what I'm saying to you, what most people may think Jerusalem is, it's not, because the Bible says that it's going to be desolate. So we, some of us tend to believe that it's a Telerad, right? So, anywho, so yeah, it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, brought back from the sword, and gather out of the many people against the mountains of Israel, meaning all the Israelites going to be gathered from wherever they at, which have been always wasted, and brought forth out of the nations, they shall dwell safely, all of them, right? So that's what's gonna happen. So then it says, "Thou shalt ascend and come like a storm, and be like a cloud uh, to cover the land, and thou and thy band and many people with thee." Right. So it's talking about Russia. After Russia take down America, and 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 other EU people, Russia, they're gonna be ready to conquer everything. So they're gonna see us chilling over there, right? Like, and then they're gonna be like, well, let's go over there and get them. They got a lot of resources over there. I don't know how they doing it, but they got it. Let's go get them. And they're gonna have a great idea to come to attack us, right? Then it says, "Thus said the Lord Yahweh, it shall come to pass that in the same time things come into thy mind, thou shalt have an evil thought," right? So they have an evil thought, and so that evil thought is, just go get them Israelites over there, right? They chilling, what I'm saying. I don't know how they escaped out of America or whatever, because that's a whole nother story. That's another lesson how we going to get out of here. But so yeah, so he's like, man, we don't know how they got it, but just go get it. So then, but they don't know that we're gonna have our big brother with us, who the world ignorantly, mistakenly called Jesus Christ, right? Yahweh Shah. So then, so say, yeah, it's gonna be an evil thought, right? So then let's jump to Revelation, right? Let's go to Revelation. So Revelation 20:8. And it says, "And shall go out and deceive the nation which are the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is in the sand of the sea." So what is this talking about? It's talking about what we just read, that he's going to have an evil thought. Let's go back again. It says, "And thus said the Lord, it shall also come to pass that in that same time things shall come into thy mind, thou shalt think an evil thought." So what's that evil thought? The evil thought is, it shall come to deceive, and this is Revelation 20:8, "and shall go out and deceive the nations which are in the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea." So that evil thought is that they're going to make war with the Israelites, not knowing that we're safely in our land, we chilling, we're keeping the laws of God, we ain't messing with nobody. And if you know the prophecy, and if you know the rules, if we in the land doing what God wants us to do, don't mess with us, because we got a God that will fight for us, right? That's what they forgot, and they gonna find that out, right? So let's go to so let's go back to 38. So now let's go to 38. Oh, get it up here. Let's go to 38. Go back. We're gonna start at 11. Then it says, "And you will decide to invade a helpless country where the people live in peace and security, in unwalled towns, and have no defense. You will plunder and loot." Boom, boom, boom. All right, hold on. Yeah, "you will plunder and loot the people who live in the cities that were once in ruins. They have gathered from the nations, and now they have livestock and property, and live at the crossroads of the world." Right? So it's like, look, you're gonna, like, I just brought my people out of these different nations that they were scattered to. I set them up nicely. They living straight, while everybody else is doing their thing. They chilling. So don't mess with my people. That's basically what God is saying. Like, you really gonna do that? That's what you really gonna do? Then it says, I'm not that. So let's get matter of fact. So that's it on that. Let's go to Zechariah. Boom, boom, boom. Let's go to Zechariah 10 and 5, right? Hold on. Yeah, Zechariah 10 and 5 real quick, right? So, boom. Wow. So it says, boom, boom, boom. So it says, boom, boom, boom. It says, and they shall be as mighty men which tread down their enemies. It said, which tread down their enemies and murder of the streets in the battle. And they shall fight because the Lord is with them, and the riders on the horse shall be confounded, right? So why do we read this? Because they're going to come against us to fight. But like I said before, they don't know that we have our big brother with us. You know, who the world calls Jesus, Yahweh Shai, right? Our King. He's going to be fighting with us. And not only that, God is going to put the spirit on us to be able to go against these people and do miraculous things to them, right? And it says, and they shall be as mighty men which tread down their enemies in their murder in the streets of the battle, and they shall fight because the Lord is with them, and the riders on the horse shall be confounded. I will strengthen the house of Judah, and I will save the house of Joseph, and I will bring them again to the place, again to place them, for I have mercy upon them, and they shall be as though I have not cast them out, for I am the Lord their God, and I will hear them, right? And who is them? The Israelites. It's talking about us. So, and that's what's going to happen. He's going to put that spirit on us, so we, going to be able to protect ourselves in that day when they do decide to, go, whatever, right? So let's get boom, boom, boom. Let's go back to Jeremiah. So, go Jeremiah 50 and 20, right? Because like I said, we're going to have that spirit on us to carry out these things, right? And because we are the army of the Lord, right? We are, his army. And Jeremiah tells us, it's like, Jeremiah 51 and 20 says, for thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. For with thee I will break in pieces the nations. With thee I will destroy kingdoms. And with thee I will break in pieces the horse and his rider. And with thee I will break in pieces the chariot and his rider. Talking about he's going to use us to destroy these people militaries, right? In that day. And, so like I said, but, this part that we're getting into, this is more so the Armageddon part of the whole shebang, right? So let's get let's get Zechariah. So back to Zechariah. Let's go to Zechariah 12 and 7. It says, the Lord will also save the tents of Judah first, and will save the tents of Judah first, and the glory that the glory of David, of the house of David, and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. Right? So what that means? Because Judah, that's where all the kings come out of. That's the rulership tribe. That's where all the kings come out of. So, but then, of course you have, because we can see how it is. You have what they call self-hate. You have what they call tribe beefing, the 12 tribes not really getting along with each other. So that's why it says not to magnify themselves against Judah, meaning don't, puff up against Judah, because Judah is the ruling tribe, right? And it says that, it says, and the Lord shall also save the tents of Judah, and the glory of the house of David, and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah, right? So, because people's going to see, once the 12 tribes start seeing Judah getting it together, because we the leaders, right? So-called African Americans would be from the tribe of Judah. And when you look at the whole world, everybody copy our style. Everybody do what we do. Even our you know, within our nation, our, fellow Israelites, they copy our swag. There's nothing wrong with our Israelites copying our swag, but what I'm saying is the whole world follows us. You know, so once we start rising up, and that's why I was telling too, like they're not gonna magnify themselves against Judah because they're gonna be like, all right, you know, that's Judah. So just so let's get I read that. Alright, let's go to Ezekiel. Get more on this war thing. I'm getting into GNT. So Ezekiel 39 and 1 in the GNT says, the sovereign Lord said, mortal man, denounce Gog, the chief ruler of the nations of Meshach and Tubal, and tell him that I am his enemy. So God is, saying that he's an enemy of the Russian, of Russia, right? And it says, I would turn him in a new direction and lead him out of the far north until he comes to the mountain of Israel. Then I will knock his bow out of his left hand and his arrow out of his right hand, and Gog and his army and his allies will fall dead on the mountains of Israel. And I will let their bodies be food for. I will let their bodies be food. I will let their bodies be food. Where am I? Boom, boom, boom. I'll let their bodies be food for the birds and the wild animals. They will fall dead upon the open field. I, the servant Lord, have spoken. I will start a fire in the land of Gog, and along with the sea coast where the people live undisturbed, and the people will know that I am the Lord. I will make sure that my people Israel know my holy name, and I will not let my people be disgraced anymore. Right? So God is going to take care. After Russia take down the West, then God is going to use Russia to take down the West, and after He used Russia to take down the West, He's going to use us to take down Russia. That's just how He always works when you read the Bible. So then He's telling, He's letting Russia know, like, if once you start making that step towards my people, you're gonna fall right where you stand, right? So let's jump down to 11. Then it says, and the Lord said, when this happened, I will give Gog a burial ground. I will give Gog a burial ground. Oh, my bad. I will give Gog a burial ground there in Israel, and the travelers' valleys east of the Dead Sea. God and his army will be buried there. So God said, I'm like, go ahead, come to Israel. I'm not talking about modern day Israel. I'm talking about when we get there, the real people of Israel. He said, go ahead and try to make a move on my people. I'm setting up a place where you're gonna be buried right there. That's what it just said. It says, everyone in the land will bury them, and they will honor for this on this day my victory. So not only that, we're gonna make a holiday after that. After this World War III Armageddon thing, we're gonna make a holiday when we defeat these people, right? Then it says, boom, boom, boom. Everyone in the land will help bury them, and they will be a honor for this on the day of my victory. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. After the 7 months are over, men will be chosen to travel through the land in order to find and bury those bodies. So we're gonna be, God said, like, we're gonna be burying these people for 7 months. We said remaining on the ground, so they can take up the land and make it clean. As they go up and down the country, every time they find a human bone, they will put a marker beside it so that the grave diggers can come and bury it in the valley of Gog's army. There will be a town nearby named after the army, and so the land will be made clean again. So God says, look, going to get this demolished, right? And so, like, I don't got the Apocrypha with me, but when you read Second Esdras, chapter 13, it gets more, details about how Russia and the different countries that Russia gathered to come attack, who the world calls Jesus and the Israelites, which when you think about it is dumb. Like, you got to be a total prideful fool to think that you can go and fight a supernatural being. But that's what they're going to do. That's what we're technically reading, and so like I said, you can read it in Second Esdras. We went over it before, about how these different nations are going to come together to try to attack Yahushua, who the world calls Jesus, right? And so yeah, where I'm at, boom, boom, boom. So yeah, let's jump down to 21. Then where am I at? Boom, 21. It says, and the Lord said, I will let the nations see my glory and show them how I use my power and carry my just decisions. The Israelites will know from then on that I am the Lord their God, and the nations will know that the Israelites went into exile because of their sins which they committed against me, and I turned away from them and let their enemies defeat them and kill them in battle. I gave them what they deserved for their uncleanliness and their wickedness, and I turned away from them. So what he's saying is, like, when you look at the history of our people, all the stuff that we went through, God said, I let that happen to them because they didn't keep my law, and these is my people. So imagine what I'm going to do to y'all, and y'all not my people. That's technically what he's saying. He says, and when they once, boom, 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 and I gave them what they deserved for their uncleanliness and their wickedness, and I turned away from them. The sovereign Lord said, but now I will be merciful to Jacob, which is the Israelites, descendants, and the people of Israel, and I will make them prosperous again. I will protect them in my holy name when they are once more living in safety in their own land. And no one will threaten them, and they will be able to get how they were. They will be able to forget how they were disgraced for having betrayed me. In order to show to the nations that I am holy, I will bring my people back from the countries where the enemies live, right? And the people will know that I am the Lord their God, and they will know this because I sent them into captivity. So what happened to the real Israelites? They went into captivity. They didn't go into Europe and set up businesses and banks and insurance companies. The real Israelites went into captivity and now gather them and bring them back into their own land, not leaving one of them behind. I will pour out my spirit upon the people of Israel and never again to turn away from them. I, the servant Lord, have spoken. Right? That's what God is talking about. Right? What he's going to do for the real children of Israel. Right? So, let's get, boom, boom, boom. Let's get Isaiah 66 real quick. Let's see how I read over here. Let's get Isaiah 66 real quick. I think we got like one more. Let's get it over here. And it says, okay, this is Isaiah 66 and 24. It says, and they shall leave, and they will see the dead bodies of those who have rebelled against me, and the worms that eat them will never die, and the fire that burns them will never be put out. The sight of them will be disgusting to all people. So what does that mean? It means those nations that come against God in that day is going to be destroyed so badly, and that is going to be rememberable to all the rest of the nations, to where people are just going to just look and just remember and just be like, these people was idiots to come against God, to think that they can actually box with God, thinking that they can actually fight the Creator. So people just, they're just going to be, looked at in that manner. When they, when people pass and look at their dead bodies that's laying after the aftermath of this whole shebang, right? And one more verse before we get out of here. Let's get Isaiah 2:2, right? And to further prove that what's going on over there is not supposed to be going on over there if those people over there is really the people of God, right? So this is Isaiah chapter 2 and verse 2. And it says, "What the word of Isaiah the son of Amoz saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem, it came to pass the last days that the mountain of the Lord, the house, shall be established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all the nations shall flow into it." Meaning, Israel going to be the top nation on the earth, right? And all the nations is going to want to flow to it. Everybody going to want to be a part of it. That's not happening right now. A lot of countries hate the state of Israel over there, right? So it says, "And many people should go and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways." The countries are not doing that. Chinese people are still following Buddha. India, over there, they're still following Krishna and Shiva. They're not doing that, right? So it says, "And many people shall go and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways." Nobody's doing that, okay? That's not what's happening, right? So that's not what's going on. Hold on one second. Yeah, that's not what's happening, right? So then it says boom, 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 he will teach us his ways, and we will walk in his path. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, right? So that's not happening, right? The people that's over there, they're not pushing and teaching God's laws to the whole world, right? Hold on. They're not doing that, right? They don't even teach you. If you try to walk into one of these synagogues, they're going to look at you crazy. You're trying to go up in there. They're going to perhaps politely ask you to leave, or maybe ask you what you're doing there, right? But it says, boom, boom, boom. For out of Zion go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations and rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares. What does that mean? People are not going to be studying war anymore. You're not going to have manufacturing companies and factories building weapons and building bombs and stuff. We're not going to do that. But guess what's happening now? Factories is making bombs and weapons. And they've been over there since 1948. Surely we should see a semblance of what Isaiah is talking about, what will happen when we're over in the land, right? So, hold on, Salaki. So then, it says, "And he shall judge the nations and rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pronghooks. And nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." So we're not going to be studying war. We're not going to be... Hold on. Yeah, we're not going to be studying war anymore. We're not going to be, looking on the news and seeing stuff getting blown up when the real Israelites are back in the land. It says, He shall judge among the nations and rebuke the people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into prong hooks, and the nation should not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. O house of Jacob, come ye and let us walk in the light of the Lord. Right? So that's what's gonna happen, right? When the real Israelites are in the land. It's not gonna be no Iran versus the Israelis and Hamas and all that stuff going on. It ain't gonna be that, because it's gonna be righteousness going on in that land, and the people are gonna know that the real Israelites is in that land. It's just like the president of Egypt said, that the president of Egypt said, but yeah, so my bad, getting calls and stuff. I don't know why everybody want to call. So it says, so yeah, we're not gonna be studying war anymore or nothing like that, right? It's not gonna be any of that type of stuff going on that we see now. So, like I said, and if we know prophecy, then we understand that what's going on over there. Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. The president of Egypt said that the reason why it can never be peace over there with the people that's over there in Israel, because the Israelites left black, but they returned white. So what does that mean? That means that they're not who they say they are. That's why they can't accept them over there. That's why it's always going to be beef until they get up out of there, because they know who the Arab people know who the Israelites are. We just don't know who they are, right? So with that being said, hopefully that was edifying. We get a little more understanding what's going on with this Russia thing, and seeing how it's all part of the Most High divine plan, and everything is going to plan. All we got to do is keep the faith and keep the commandments. And so with that being said, I'm saying shalom, peace, I'm out.